Hi everyone, it's great to have you watching another virtual AABA demo. Paul Dief, aka Dief, is our demonstrator this month. I'm Steve Miller, your AABA First VP, responsible for bringing these videos to you. Dief shows us how to make bud grass on the power hammer, introduces us to his new forging press making Ocotillo Stems, and hand forges a twisted leaf hook. The encore is a tour of his progress on the container home he and Maggie are building. Now let's get to work.
Okay, I'm going to show you how I make a thing I call bud grass. And I saw a video years ago of Yuri Hoffy making this. His buds were a lot longer, and what he did is he'd taper the stalk, and then he would then grab the bar tongs and go to the corner of the dies on the power hammer, and it would pinch and draw it out. It works. What I found is the die is trying to spit it out, and you're trying to hold it in there, so every once in a while that wouldn't quite work, and I'd mess it up, usually towards the finished end of it, and then I'd have to cut it off and have a shorter piece. But I'm going to show you a little jig I made and how this works. When you pinch, it causes it to bend. So each time I stick it in there, I do a little a spin on it before I pinch the next one, and that gives this thing this subtle spiral, and it's a really nice organic form. And I've done fences, sculptures out of them, all sorts of stuff. It's just beautiful. This has still not been finished. I usually then wire brush the scale off and then Japan brown it and then lacquer it. It comes out pretty good. So what we've got over here are the dies, and what you can see over here, we have the die and the jig I have, and you can see I've got some tool steel, just some square pieces in there with a rounded corner. Then I have this post right here. I can then stick this in and then start hammering, and this post allows me to keep nice firm pressure on it, hold it in place, and I can use that to then pivot it out or pivot it in, and it gives me nice, good, firm control. And again, I do one, and then rotate a little bit, shove it in there, and that works out pretty good. Voila! Alright, this is a fly press. It's got about a 100-pound wheel up here, threaded screw there, and as you pull it back and then let go or force it, this has a lot of momentum and it drives the ram down, and this is just bolt-in tooling. This particular jig is for a part of a bending jig, and you can certainly do hot, but it does cold work too. I can put this as half-inch solid square. I can put this in there, and then I can just start bumping it. And then depending on the spacing between your bumps, you can vary the curve. So you can see really quick, you can get a nice smooth curve. And then another jig I've got, which I'm going to put in there, is to show you how I make a specialty little tool I've got. There it is. So we're going to raise this up, put a block of wood in there just to hold it up out of the way. That guy comes out. And this is just a flat plate, piece of 3/4 round bar welded on there. Fly presses come in all sorts of sizes, from a 1 to a 6. This is a 5+. So I've got that guy in there, and got my bending jig at the bottom of it. I can set that. You can set the depth of how far you go by turning this gizmo and then tighten it up. I'm going to let it go all the way down. I've just got some thin stock, 14 gauge, 2 inches by 10. Pop this in there, and then just a couple little taps there, and I've got this little shape. And you're thinking, what the heck is that for? Stay there, I'll be right back. I volunteer out of Southwest Wildlife, and we use pooper scoopers to pick up coyote poop and bobcat poop. And these things are not made very well. They start falling apart. So I got this shape. I cut the old bolts and stuff out, and now I've got a nice stiff back I bolt it to, and then they never break after that. So that's just a little customized tool that I just welded up with my MIG welder. It does some great stuff like that. And what I found is once you get a tool or a machine like this, you start finding uses for it. They're just real handy. You can put in chisels in this and do lines. For instance, if you're doing a pineapple twist, you can heat it up and do it by hand, or you can do it cold with this puppy and just put that groove right in there really fast. You can put punches in there and punch holes. I've got all sorts of different tools. Doing shallow grooving, not real sharp, just want to put a nice wide line in something. And this is just a grade 8 bolt that I forged and rehardened for that tool. All right, now I'm going to show you my next machine that I got that I just love. This is my 16-ton hydraulic press. It's made by a company called Coal Iron Works, and this thing is amazing. I got it because I thought I saw one at Peter Seven's place. He has a hydraulic press, and I want one of those. And I eventually got the funds together and got this. And it's got a hand-operated lever, or you can operate it by foot. And basically, turn it on, up, down. It'll just smash the heck out of anything. And one thing I found, if you're not careful, if you're smashing things that are a little on the cold side, below red heat, if you're not careful, you'll hear this cracking sound as the metal just starts cracking apart from too much pressure on it. You can put spacers in there to control the depth. I've got 1/2 inch, 3/8 quarter. So I can just lay that spacer bar in there. Since that's cold, it's not going to get smashed. And that I can then control how far I go down. So let me heat up. I'm going to show you first how I make tenons on the end of my bud grass. If they're going into a top of a block wall, I want a tenon. So this is 3/4 stock, and I do 1/2 inch there. And then I can drill a hole and then epoxy this in, sticking up out of the wall. It looks great. Or a rock if it's a sculpture. And you can certainly use a power hammer to do this, but I found that with this machine I can just do it in 2 fast heats and get a nice consistent tenon on there. I'm going to take a few minutes here just to show you around my shop. It's a 30 by 30 foot building, 15 foot clear. These big panels up here, the 3 of them there, all are in a single, well, you can't really see it up there. But it's a single point trolley, and I can just undo those vice grips there, rotate them 90 degrees, and slide them all out of the way. That's why there's that bar at the bottom of the door that's within another door. And that way, for like the art show, which is starting up this weekend, that's what the tent is out there for, I can open it all up and have people in. This corner up here is my display corners where I put all the stuff I can show clients that are coming by. Show them what I'm doing. And then if you remember, my old shop was a 30-foot container that just had a lean-to roof. Well, I kept that container and moved it over here and then built the walls attached to it and around it. The workbench is just bolted to the container, so I just had to unbolt it and move it here. That way, when it was sitting in the dirt, I didn't have to have legs that would be uneven. Inside this puppy is my electrical system, the compressor there in the back, and then of course my disaster area of shelves. We're still getting things organized, and I got some cool old antique tools. There's a post drill there that I refurbished and is working. And then one of the toys I'm messing with is this big reciprocating saw down here. And on the arm of it, it says July, patent July 1912. And so I'm going to get this puppy running just for the heck of it. It's a beast. It took an engine hoist to get it up into my truck. Oh, that big white box there, that's a big 5 foot by 5 foot evap cooler for my climbing gym. We got 6 of those puppies on the roof, building new ones. And that's looking around. I got a nice little setup here. And eventually there'll be shelves and stuff up on top of the container. Right now it's just a huge big pile. And believe it or not, I had pack rats in this building for a while until I caught them and released them outside. And they were jumping up on top of this shelf up there, and they'd get on top, and they made a nice nest up on top. So I collected them and the babies and moved them outside. I built a little home for them outside. Thing here when you're changing the dies in your power hammer, this is a 110-pound hammer. The air's on, it's fully charged up. And theoretically it will stay there and I could change these out. But if anything happens and this drops, that's 110 pounds, that would turn my finger into a pancake. So what I do for safety is I've got this big C-clamp and I clamp that onto the hammer. So now it's holding up there. I can turn the air off and that thing's not going to move. And then to change dies in this, I'm actually going to put in some, just a general purpose die on it. Right now they're flat dies, so I can put these jigs in there. They just bolt on. And then these dies are just held in with 3 set screws. When I first got this power hammer, I got it, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but I had this round pipe. I think, what the heck is that for? It doesn't fit anything. So I called them up, and I said, what's that for? And they said, it's a cheater bar for your wrench, because otherwise it really tears up your hands trying to get that out. So slide it back in, tighten this up, and then what I found is that the mill scale, when you're hammering lots of stuff, gets down in this little seam here, and it can make the dies so tight that you have to beat it out with a hammer. And so Grizz said, oh, I know how to fix that. You just get some grease and you run into that seam. That way the mill scale, fire scale doesn't get down in there and make it really hard to get out. And you only have to do that on the bottom one unless you're in one of those shops where stuff falls upwards. But in here everything falls downwards. Okay, so there's 2 parts of the dies in this press. There's flat and then there's a crown like this. I'm going to use that first to start my tenon on where I wanted the tenon to begin, and then I'll use this to keep going. So I've crushed that down to 1/2-inch square. Now I'm going to use the flats to finish that square all the way down to the end. So now I've got a nice square, 1/2-inch square, put it back in the fire and then round it up. All right, so I've heated this back up. Gonna stick it in there when you're going from a square, you wanna go to round, you're gonna hit the corners first, make an octagon, and then round it up from there. section. Now I use the big flat portion to squeeze the rest of it down. There you go. There's a nice half-inch round tenon. And I use the rounded dies that's here because I want this is going in a 5/8 hole, and that slope portion sticks down in the hole and makes it look nice, like it's growing right out of the rock or right out of the tiles. This here's a nifty little machine I picked up. I don't even remember where I got it, but it wasn't moving, it was rusted. And it's a shear, and on the sides there's different holes for different size stock, and then you've got a handle you stick in there, and then turn that, and it shears it off, and it comes in handy. Now I could use a hacksaw to do this, but this is so much faster, and it does 1/2 inch, no problem. I can put this as 1/4 inch rod I'm making some hooks out of, and you can see it just chops it. So the moral of the story is whenever you're out in a garage sale or somewhere and you see something really old and rusty and think that looks kind of cool, call me, I'll come and get it and take care of it. No, get it, you free it up. If something is rusted real solid, you can start spraying it with penetrating oil or even WD-40. If it's really stuck, don't brute force it. You don't want to break little things like this off. But what you can do is take a propane torch, heat it up. You're not trying to heat it up red hot, just a black heat. Let it cool. Heat it up, let it cool. That expansion and contraction will help break the rust bond, and you can get things loose. And this thing works great, and it's older than heck. It's a lot older than me, but kind of handy to have. And so you never know what you're going to find. Always keep your eyes open when you're out and about. All right, so I've got some 1-inch stock here. So what I've got now is this blunt taper. I've been pinching it down. I want those individual press marks in there. I've got a flat spot there, so when I heat it back up, I'll reheat those. Then I'll come in here and squeeze this down into a 1/2 inch, and then I can cut that off and weld that onto a piece of textured 1/2 inch bar that I make, and then I've got an Ocotillo form. Another little nifty hint here is when you're working, especially with heavier stock, you want some tong clips or tong rings. These, you can see they're 3 different sizes on the end there. There we go, 3 different sizes. I'll get used to this camera thingy. That way you don't have to squeeze it, you can just hold it. It makes it much easier on your hands, especially if you're working long days. While that's heating back up, I'll just show you up close. This is just something I made. I drilled some holes and then just connected them with the plasma cutter and then smoothed it out, so you got 3 different sizes. Another thing you can do is just take different sizes of pipe, cut off a little bit, take off the rough edges and smash them flat. So now you've got different size tong rings you can do. And on your tongs, they can fit on there. You can keep them loose. And then as you grab your stock, you just slide it back till it tightens up. And that works out really good. All right, so I've got it heated back up. I'm going to hit those flat spots real quick and then pinch it down. All right, so now you can see I've got the Ocotillo form isolated. It's got a nice organic look to it. I can, if I wanted to, I could continue forging this down so that it was one solid piece, which I'll do for some short pieces, but for longer pieces, I'll cut this off, grind a bevel on the edge, weld that onto some textured stock, and then run that weld through the texture hammer, and then it basically disappears. You can't even see it. Not too shabby. So you can see these are handy machines. If you don't have the stop in there, basically you can just press it down till it's almost nothing and it breaks right off. It's the first time I started using it, you get mesmerized by it and you lift it up and you just keep going up and up and up, and it's like, okay, now I got to go way back down. And so you do sort of work blind, because it's when it's in there you really can't see what's on the other side, exactly what it's doing sometimes, but you get a feel for it really quick. And I'm really happy with this machine. They make bigger ones that more tonnage, but they run on higher voltage. This is 110 volt. It's on wheels. You just roll it around. I can get it out of the way, and I've been super happy with it. I'm going to show you how to make a cool little hook that I do that's kind of fun to do. Starts 1/4 inch round rod. I'm going to put a point on the end. Step back, and I'm going to neck that down. Alright, so now I've got a nice little point here, a little bit of left it alone, and then narrowed it down and rounded that up. Okay, now I'm going to put the corner up on that point I had and use the rounding side of the hammer to spread it out. Alright, so now I've got a nice little leaf going on there. And what I do is I bend the corner back, because the leaf has two sides. You got the back side against the anvil, and it's very smooth, very plain looking. But the front side has all the hammer marks, and that's what makes it kind of cool. And if you haven't figured out, this camera, when I'm looking at the screen to see what's showing on, it's opposite. So I keep having to move my hand the opposite way what the screen is showing. So that's why there's this back and forth thing going on. So now I've got that leaf on one end. I'm going to flip it over and put a leaf on this end, and then we'll go from there. So now I'm making a second leaf on the other end, and just to kind of go over some stuff, I'm working that piece at the edge of the anvil so I get a point. You work it out here in the middle and you're off at all, you're going to bounce off the anvil. But when you're on the edge, you can be off on your hammering a little bit and it still works out just fine. And even though it's a black heat, I can still work it a little bit. Those are just basically planishing blows, knocking down the corners so I get a mostly roundish shape. I don't want it perfectly round, because I'm a blacksmith, I'm not a machinist. All right, again, I'm putting one of the corners up, and then just start rounding the rounded end. I don't know if you can tell from the video, but I am doing glancing blows, trying to stretch that out to get that nice little leaf shape. So now that I've got the leaf shape on both ends, it doesn't matter if they line up or not. You don't have to make sure they're in the same plane. We're going to bend this roughly in half. It doesn't have to be exact. If I had another pair of tongs. I'm going to go over to the vise. The electric starter went on a long time ago. These instant-on torches are great for getting the forge going. So I've got it roughly bent in half, and I'm just going to knock it down, straighten it out, and get them basically parallel. That's what we want. You'll notice the leaves aren't at the same spot. They're in two different spots. That's fine. They don't, again, we're not going for Swiss watch accuracy on here, as you'll see in just a little bit. So now I'm going to put this back in the forge, and then we're going to twist it up. Okay. I'm going to pop the middle of it in the vise there. And then these tongs are perfect. They can grab onto this, and then we're just going to twist it up. And then we're going to go down, I don't know about far. Again, none of this has to be exact. And then we're going to grab one twist and open it back up. So you can see we got it open up. That's where the screw or the nail is going to go to hold this hook to the wall. Now we're just going to square this hook up a little bit. Like, you can leave it rounded like that. I like it flattened out. Alright, so now we have our basic hook there. See if I can get that in the video right. Oh man, going the wrong direction. So, got the hook, and now I got to do something with the leaves on the end, so they're kind of ugly still. One quick note, you'll notice I started bending it over on the horn. And the reason is where it's parallel here, that bends a lot harder than where it's twisted. Those twists make it bend real easy. So if I just start going over the edge of the anvil, it's going to bend at the first twist. Whereas if I work that on the horn, I get that bent, and then I finish it up. I like being able to do that free form and get just the amount of curve I want for the project I'm doing it for. And the cool thing about these hooks is no two are alike. They're all brothers and sisters. They're related, but they're all different. All right, I've got the stems and leaves, and I'm going to take my scrolling tongs and just start twiddling these around. Now remember, when I bent the hook back down in the anvil, that bend goes towards the wall. That makes sure I never have the sharp pointy thing out. And you can bend them up any way you want. You can make them parallel, crossover. It doesn't really matter. And that's why I said no two are alike. And then we'll straighten that out. I'm going to make sure that these are laying more or less flat. I'm going to tweak the end of it a little bit, straighten that out. And now I'm going to wire brush all the fire scale off. And this is a pretty cool hook. But here's the magic part. I'm going to take a brass brush. Let me turn this around so you can see it a little bit better. But when it's a black heat, you take a brass brush and you rub it, the brass comes off onto the iron. So, and it's uneven, the scale doesn't take it as much, and so you get, I don't like painting anything that I've blacksmithed anyways, and so this gives it some color without having to paint it. It's uneven and it really adds a little pizzazz. And then on these, I take beeswax, which out here in Cave Creek, I used to store it under my workbench in a bucket until all the rats stole it all. And now I keep it in the refrigerator, keeps the rats away. Plus in the summer, it doesn't turn into just a molten mess on the floor. And the thing is, beeswax, just a little bit, you're not trying to, drown it. And you don't want it so hot that it bursts into flames. I've done that. And then here's the most important part. Get a rag that doesn't have any holes in it. Otherwise, you're going to yell a lot. And just wipe it down, rub it in. Get all that nice. And then what you end up with is this fantastic looking hook. Okay? That bronze color on the leaves is just fantastic. I sell these for 15 bucks. When I'm cranking them out, I can crank out quite a few in an hour. And they're a calling card. I'm not going to make a living selling these hooks, but people come to my shows, come to my studio, and this is something that even if they're not ready to buy something big, they buy this and every day they look at it and go, oh yeah, that blacksmith iron guy made that. The other thing I want to show you real quick, I took a few minutes, and literally it was under 5 minutes using the press. There's that Ocotillo form I did, and I just kept drawing that out. And I haven't cleaned this up yet, but you can see it's got a nice texture to it. And that's just one solid piece. And I'll just keep drawing this out for as long as I want. And I'll get a bunch of them, put them together, epoxy them into a nice looking rock, and I'll have a nice little outdoor sculpture, or an indoor sculpture for that matter. But there's just something cool when it's one solid piece, and the customers really like that. I'll leave this out tomorrow during the show that I've got going so they can see that it started with this and ended up looking like this. So that's kind of the end of my show. I am going to show you around my house in the morning. Right now it's a little dark out, but I am building a shipping container house. That's a long story. It's been going on for a while, but we're getting there. And then if you have any questions, you can call me. My number is 602-509-1543, anything like that. You can email me, Dief, D-I-E-F, at desertratforge.com. Happy to answer your questions. And if you want to come try the press here sometime, I do open forges the first Saturday of each month, except December. I'm skipping December. You can come out and try some of this stuff and have some fun. Okay, so this is the house I'm building. There's 6 shipping containers, 3 on each side. They're 2 high, single, and then over here another 2 and a single back in there. And this is Sheila. We're setting up for the art show. So she's got her big cow tarps up there. As you can see, we've got 11 of the 15 trusses going up. We build them one at a time right here on this big 50-foot long beam. And then we haul them up with this scaffold and the winch at the top, lower them onto those 4 posts, and then drag them down to the far side with come-alongs. You notice the trusses have 3 layers. The middle layer is the ceiling, and then there's another roof above that, so the building will always be in the shade. And this great room is about 1,200 square feet. It'll all be open. There'll be a trussed floor because it's sloping. And kitchen over here, most of that wall comes out. This will be the bedroom, and we're going to bump the left wall out about 6 feet to make it a little wider. There'll be stairs coming up. on that far container, a bridge across the middle, and then catwalks to get to the 2 upstairs containers, which are closets. And Maggie says I get at least 1 little box in one of the closets for my stuff. And Sheila laughs because she knows it's true. And the front end of the house here, the front door is going to be right about here. This wall will be all glass. That far wall down there is all glass. We can open them all up, lots of ventilation. There'll be a tightrope going across down there, a fireman's pole. And no, I'm not kidding, it'll all be in there. We're going to put a zip line. And then over here you can see that's going to be the garage. Right now we're living in that little trailer. And then on the far side is the shop. So whenever you're up in the Cave Creek area, give me a holler, wander on up, and I'll show you around. Lots of wildlife. Should be a herd of deer wandering by here pretty soon. And then last night the javelinas were poking around, and there's bobcats, a gazillion snakes, all sorts of critters like that.